I recently acquired a metal bench from Facebook Marketplace. The previous owners had left it in the elements and it had plenty of rust on it. This bench had a bonus, a Vise. I had no idea what brand it was until I got there and picked it up. To my surprise, it was a nice Craftsman Vise. Unfortunately, the owner decided to weld it to the bench, so I had to take my grinding wheel and carefully remove the outer edge of the grind, and then after that, use my cutoff blade to carefully remove the vise from the table. After removing the vise, there was some gouges in the table. Went ahead and took my grinding wheel and cleaned up the gouges. After cleaning the gouges, I took a 40 grit flap disc and went to work on all the rust of the bench. I took my favorite Rust-Oleum spray paint and gave it a couple of coats. After the paint cured, I put it in its final resting place. This bench easily weighs over 250 plus pounds. I wanted to get to the vise. I remember doing the restoration for the Atlas drill press, and I was excited to start another one. As you can see, it has plenty of rust. And there's the damage done when I was cutting it off the bench. The locking lever was damaged, so I took my sledgehammer and straightened it out with my Doyle vise. After getting it semi-straight, I took it over to my bench grinder wire wheel and removed all the dust and rust. I started with a receivable jaw. I wanted to remove the screws to the jaws. I hear that they get seized a lot, and I was happy that this one came out easy. Some areas were hard to get to, so I used a cup wire wheel. I started to disassemble the vise to assess the damage. The screws to the main body's jaw were seized. I did my best to try to get them off using WD-40, but they wouldn't budge. I thought of using a hammer to tap them to loosen them, as well as my heat gun, but nothing seemed to work. Finally, I used my drill and carefully drilled them out, being careful not to damage the internal threads. Now to remove the rust from the main body. After removing all the rust from each piece, I went ahead and took some acetone and wiped everything down to prep for painting. I taped everything that I did not want paint to get onto. I used a special foam to cover the large openings of the vise. It worked really well. Now that each piece was prepped, I gave them a couple of coats of the same paint that I used on the Atlas drill press, black stainless steel by Rust-Oleum. After the paint was cured, I took the same silver Sharpie that I used on the Atlas drill press and marked all of the raised casting letters. It looked pretty sharp. Now to put it together, I started with the movable jaw and handle and shaft assembly. I dropped the modified spring followed by the washer down the shaft against the movable jaw. I depressed the spring and washer with some long pieces of metal I had laying around. Then I pushed the E-clip into the shaft groove, locking everything secure. I then grabbed the base and greased the top, followed by the bottom of the vise body for fluidity. I placed the swivel locking bolt through the bottom of the base and set the body of the vise down on the base. I secured them together with the swivel lock lever. After greasing the replaceable nut, I put it inside the vise and I bolted the body to the replaceable nut using the bottom bolt. I installed each of the jaws with the new screws. Now to assemble the vise. Then I screwed the shaft through the replaceable nut until it started to feed through the body. It glided smoothly and worked flawlessly. The vise was complete, and it looked great. I wanted to put the vise on the corner of my bench so it could rotate so I could use the side or the front if needed. I used a couple of punches to punch some holes to start the process to tap. So I tapped a 3/8 inch 16 thread hole inside the top square tube leg and drilled the other 3 installation holes on the bench. The threads came out good and the bolt worked fine. Now to mark the corresponding hole with a punch. I proceeded to drill the rest of the mounting holes. Now to mount the vise. Luckily, all of the holes lined up. I was careful not to tighten that threaded bolt too tight, but it didn't seem to mind. I then secured the rest of the mounting bolts. After securing the vise to the bench, I drilled the holes for my bench grinder off camera and secured it to the other corner of the bench. I decided that the Evolution S380 CPS will just float on my bench, so no drilling holes for that now. The project was a success and I'm very happy with the results. The vise is beautiful and the bench is going to come in really handy. I really like that it's heavy and it has a very thick metal top to it. I like the fact that it's long enough to handle all 3 of the tools that were roaming around my shop without a home. It's going to be perfect for future projects. I couldn't be more happier. Thank you for watching and supporting this channel. Please remember to like and subscribe and tell a friend about this. Have a great day.